Small cells are different than other generations because they will utilize a different part of the spectrum, which include frequencies called millimeter waves. Millimeter waves have difficulty penetrating solid objects such as the walls of buildings. In order to overcome this, they will be placed closer to the user with a higher density of infrastructure. Current 1G to 4G cell towers are typically placed far from the user, from about 2/3 of a mile to 2 miles away, while 5G networks will have as many as one small cell transmitter approximately 500 to 750 feet apart. 5G will also work with the broader 3G and 4G infrastructure, as well as with the smart grid. Smart meters are the building blocks for the smart grid. These meters govern the distribution of electricity to our homes and businesses and transmit information to our local providers via wireless communications. Privacy, security, health, accuracy, and consumer fraud risks have been identified with smart meters, and depending on the regulatory protections in your state, your utility will be able to sell this information to a series of corporations and the government. Policies regarding wireless radiation are regulated by the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC. The FCC chair is a revolving door of former telecom executives, which is why many view it as a captive agency, meaning that it prioritizes the interests of the telecommunications industry over the best interests of citizens. Ajit Pai, who was the chairman from 2017 to 2021, was previously an attorney for Verizon. In order to protect citizens from adverse health impacts from wireless radiation, the FCC has defined the maximum levels to which humans should be exposed. These limits are based on data from at least 25 years ago and are currently being litigated. The United States has set this at 1,000 microwatts per centimeter square, which simply stated is the maximum level of radiation exposure before it is hazardous to your health. You can see by the chart that most countries have far lower levels than the US. The Telecommunications Act of 1996, or the TCA, was the first significant overhaul of telecommunications law, amending the Communications Act of 1934. This overhaul broadened the regulatory power of the FCC to include the impact wireless radiation has on human health. The 1996 TCA gave the FCC the ability to preempt local governments' ability to regulate the placement of wireless facilities based on environment, later argued to include health. Along with the 1996 Telecommunications Act, local government limitations now include further restrictions. The FCC passed their streamlining rules in 2018, which include shot clocks, deemed approved clause, caps on fees, and bans on moratoriums. Also included in this order was a requirement that aesthetic regulations be no more burdensome than requirements applied to other infrastructure deployment and limits on fees cities can charge. In September 2020, the Ninth Circuit Court issued a ruling stating that the FCC's aesthetic requirement was an overreach of power, as well as suggesting that cities have the authority to access fees over and above safe harbor. They just need to justify it as it relates to their costs. According to the CTIA, which is the lobbyist group for the cellular industry, the current wireless infrastructure began in 1983 with the first 1G antennas. The CTIA estimates that there are over 150,000 cellular towers in the United States, requiring 800,000 more 5G wireless facilities. As if placing 5G antennas everywhere isn't enough, satellites have already been launched to create 5G in low orbit. SpaceX, OneWeb, Boeing, Spire Global, and Project Kuiper are just a few companies who are launching these satellites. These satellites will beam down 5G frequencies from space, blanketing the Earth with microwave radiation. And already there are reports of problems. Astronomers have relayed that 5G satellites are blocking views. The National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration states that 5G global networks threaten weather forecasting. NASA relays that 5G networks threaten their communications systems, and the Department of Defense and the Department of Transportation state that the 5G will interfere with their GPS navigational systems. There are also privacy issues that coincide with wireless technology. Personal information collection, analysis, and dissemination is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Communications from smart devices provide a very detailed consumer profile. The consumer profile can tell interested parties what specific devices they own, when they use them, when they are home, when they go to sleep, when they wake up, and so much more. This information is as good as gold for those seeking to influence the behavior of citizens. Information collection and analysis is being enabled by our government and also enforced by government entities charged with the oversight of utility monopolies. Why is this concerning? Because it goes against our foundational federal and state constitutions, which are supposed to protect our privacy and protect us from unreasonable search and seizures. Important to note is that wireless technology and infrastructure is also much more susceptible to cyber attacks than hardwired systems, and former CIA Director James Woolsey knows it. In 2011, he stated that there is no one in charge of the grid giving easy access to hackers, and that a so-called smart grid that is as vulnerable as what we've got is not smart at all. It's a really, really stupid grid. Manufactured doubt is a term used to describe actions taken by organizations to obscure the harmful effects of their products or actions by manipulating scientific evidence. An internal 1969 document from a tobacco company relayed that doubt is our product, since it is the best means of competing with the body of fact that exists in the minds of the general public. It is also the means of establishing a controversy. In the 1950s, epidemiology studies, animal experiments, cellular pathology, and chemical analytics proved lung cancer, once rare, was now epidemic because of cigarette smoking. Yet advertisements like these made people feel that cigarettes were harmless. Other industries also ignored the science to include DDT, asbestos, glyphosate, and more. Another tactic used by the industry is called astroturfing. Astroturfing is the attempt to create an impression of widespread grassroots support for a policy, individual, or product where little such support exists. Astroturfers often disguise themselves and publish blogs, write letters to the editor, produce ads, start nonprofits, establish Facebook and Twitter accounts, edit Wikipedia pages, or simply post comments online to try to fool you into thinking an independent grassroots movement is speaking. Using their partners in the news media, they attempt to lend an air of legitimacy or impartiality to their efforts. Social media platforms are a haven for paid media trolls posing as regular people, attacking and controversializing people and organizations exposing wrongdoing, rather than directly addressing the wrongdoing itself, are hallmarks of astroturfed media stories. In an April 2018 issue of The Nation, Mark Hertsgaard and Mark Dowie have written a report entitled "How Big Wireless Made Us Think That Our Cell Phones Are Safe," a special investigation, revealing the disinformation campaign and massive radiation increase behind the 5G rollout, manipulating science, government, and media, telecom has hidden the dark truth about the impact wireless has on our health. As well, in an e-book published by the Edmund J. Safra Center for Ethics at Harvard University and written by Norm Alster, the publication captured agency, how the Federal Communications Commission is dominated by the industry it presumably regulates. This well-researched book details how the telecom industry controls the FCC through its well-placed campaign spending in Congress, as well as its control of the FCC's congressional oversight committees through its persistent agency lobbying. When people think about microwave radiation, they think about cancer. In reality, the more prevalent symptoms connected to non-ionizing radiation are headaches, sleep deprivation, depression, lack of focus, lack of impulse control, slowed reaction time, tremors, vertigo, and more. It's also important to note that electromagnetic sensitivities, or EMS, is considered a disability. Studies completed in the 1970s were initiated after World War II personnel experienced health problems while exposed to microwave radiation while using radar equipment. Their symptoms included headaches, sleep deprivation, depression, lack of focus, lack of impulse control, slowed reaction time, tremors, vertigo, and more. Over 2,000 studies were completed linking weak radio frequency radiation to more than 122 biological effects. There's the 1972 U.S. Naval Medical Research Institute study and the 1974 U.S. Army study. There's also a compendium of thousands of research studies regarding health impacts of microwave radiation. As well, in the 1990s, firefighters experienced symptoms after 2G and 3G cell towers were installed on or near firehouses. Their symptoms included headaches, sleep deprivation, depression, lack of focus, lack of impulse control, slowed reaction time, tremors, vertigo, and more. The entire argument of the industry is based on the assumption that only ionizing radiation causes DNA changes because it has enough energy to free electrons from the atoms or molecules they are attached to, and because it causes thermal effects or heating of tissue. This was the prevailing thought when the FCC set guidelines in 1996. Since then, thousands of studies have proven that harm happens well below these levels. In 1997, Dr. Henry Lai reported DNA single and double strand breaks at levels far below the current FCC exposure standard, proving non-ionizing radiation damages DNA. As well, these low-level radiation frequencies impact children differently than adults. In this brain image, you can see the comparative radiation penetration from cell phone usage in a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an adult. These images show that the children's brains absorb more radiation than an adult after the same amount of exposure. This is attributed to higher water content and thinner skulls in children. In an attempt to prove conclusively once and for all whether or not wireless radiation is harmful, the FDA sponsored an extremely thorough $30 million study beginning in 1999. The study was conducted by the National Toxicology Program. The study results were first reported in 2016 and peer-reviewed in 2018 and showed clear evidence of tumors in the hearts of male rats. It also showed some evidence of tumors in the brains of male rats and some evidence of tumors in the adrenal glands of male rats. In the U.S., clear evidence is the highest level of certainty. As well, the world's largest animal study showing the harmful impacts of cell towers was conducted by the Ramazzini Cancer Research Institute in Italy, which found the same unusual cancers as the NTP study. Many other studies have also shown biological impacts of radio frequency radiation. These radio frequencies penetrate wildlife too. There are numerous studies showing harm to both plants and animals, including bee colony collapse, navigational pattern changes in birds, as well as tree and plant death when in close proximity to mobile phone base stations. Verizon and other telecom companies understand that their products have safety issues. During stakeholder meetings, the telecom companies must disclose to their stakeholders the possibility of litigation and class action lawsuits for personal injury relating to alleged health effects caused by wireless devices. As well, insurance companies are in the business of assessing risk and have defined EMFs as a pollutant. Swiss Re, the second largest reinsurer in the world, has placed devices that emit EMFs, including 5G, in the highest risk category. In their 2019 annual report, they cited increased health effects from EMFs, hackers' ability to exploit wireless 5G to steal data, privacy and security breaches, as well as espionage as reasons for this classification. As a result, insurance companies like Swiss Re and Lloyd's of London, as well as other insurance companies, have also placed EMF exclusion statements in their standard liability policies. Because of the 1996 Telecom Act and the 2018 streamlining rules and the many other issues causing confusion on this complex subject of wireless infrastructure, cities across the country are stating that their hands are tied. But local governments have more ability to regulate than they believe, but are often told by their own attorneys that their hands are tied. But independent telecom attorneys and analysts agree that cities' hands are not tied. They know that the industry has created an environment of fear, conveying veiled threats of lawsuits if communities try to enact protective ordinances. Many of these attorneys and analysts have worked inside the telecom industry, so they know firsthand how fear is used by the industry. By standing up to telecom, many local governments have found legal ways to add language that protect the interests of local government and citizens and still stay in compliance with all federal and state laws and FCC rules and orders. Based on the advice of these independent attorneys, here is a list of a few key provisions that local wireless ordinances should include. And many cities have boldly stood up and found ways to create protective ordinances for their cities and residents, showing that cities' hands are not tied. Here is a list of a few of the California cities that have managed to put together protective language in their ordinances. There are many things people can do, and most of these take very little time, but there is no doubt that all of us need to take action. Residents are the only thing that will change this, and as Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Please do your own research. The websites I've included here are ones that I found to be credible sites with peer-reviewed research from non-industry independent scientists.